Okay, welcome everybody. So today, a couple things we have to. Um, no, so the map of the rest of the course, because obviously when you guys have this first stage of finals before Thanksgiving, we will not be meeting. So actually, we'll meet this week and next week, and then the week of the 16th, we do not meet, right? Because you have study and finals. I just want to make sure that we are set up for the speakers on Wednesdays. So this Wednesday, we'll have Lawrence Lowe of Symphoria coming to us. And just a reminder, let me share the screen with you because I think people are unclear about where you're supposed to submit your reflection writings and all of those things. So what I've set up is the program note assignment here, recording comparison report, the Ithaca Symphony, which is due today. And then you should all be pursuing doing interview of a living conductor. Amy has already done one with James, which was really well done, Amy. So very nice job. And then you have two assignments due after the break. Okay. And then the Florence Prize, some of you have sent me the score and parts. You should actually upload it here into this module. Okay.
Professor, there's no upload thing. That's why I think maybe we emailed it to you.
Oh, I see. Okay. So
Yeah.
let me just edit that so that you can upload it right now. Let's see.
Also, if we use MuseScore, would you like us to put an MP3 file as well? Or
Just give me a second. File upload. Yeah, then that should be. Yeah, that should work now, correct?
yeah, that would be that would
Awesome. Okay, and what was the question?
My question was if we use MuseScore, would you like an MP3 file as well, or is that not necessary?
Um, it's sure, why not? Yeah, it's not necessary, but it just PDF is fine. But if you want to put in a MP3 file, that's fine as well. Okay. Uh, so, uh, um, well, one of the things I've seen, because I do want to talk about it in terms of arranging things for your ensemble, right? So, one of the things you have to think about as a conductor is you have to really think about what does it feel like to be a person sitting in an ensemble, right? So, if you're a violinist, you're busy all the time. You're always playing the melody. You're playing from bar one to bar and the last bar, right? But if you're the tuba player, or if the bass player, if you're the bass clarinet player or contra bassoon player, what does your experience in orchestra like, right? So what you have to do, if you, especially if you're arranging something for your ensemble, because what I've seen so far of all the arrangements is that it's been very violin centric in terms of distribution of melodic material, right? So, and I'll share my version with you once everybody's in. But what I've done is try to distribute the carrying of the melodic material throughout the orchestra. So even the bass part, they get to play some of the melodic material. So one great chance to do that is there is a da capo where you get to a certain portion of the piece and you get to go back, right? So rather than just do a simple da capo where you just do the same way, this might be a great opportunity for where you assign the melodic material to somebody else rather than the violins, right? So that way the orchestra can really get engaged, right? Imagine, you're the cellos, right? And you never get to play any of the melody. That you have a very different experience with that piece, right? So oftentimes especially when you're arranging a piece for your ensembles, you want to be really sensitive to what is the experience of each member engaging with this piece, right? I used to have in fact, when Alec was in the orchestra, I had to really think about, all right, well, which Brahms symphony am I going to do? Well, I can't do one because it doesn't have tuba, right? So I mean, and that played into the role of what pieces I considered because I knew Alec would be in the orchestra. I was like, well, if I program those two pieces, he's going to sit out for 3/4 of the concert. So when I have a great tuba player in the orchestra, then I will shy away from doing pieces that doesn't include tuba, right? And there was a point when I was teaching, we had two harpists in the orchestra. So then I like racked my brains to find pieces that utilize two harps rather than pick a piece that doesn't use harp at all. And my two harpists is like, well, okay, we're here. So one of the things you have to really consider in programming we're going to talk about today is who is the group of people that is sitting in your ensemble, right? So if you are lucky to have two harpists or a great tuba player or a great bass clarinet player or even a saxophone player who shows up and hey, I want to be in the orchestra, then you got to go out and find pieces that includes those people rather than sort of having this violin-centric way of looking at the world and the repertoire and saying, well, I would love to do that particular piece because I really love the melody. Well, you have to also think about who are the people that are going to be playing this piece, right? So when you're arranging, always try to think about, okay, I know this arrangement, it's very melodic line is top heavy, right? So if you're not careful and just do by simply transferring top to bottom to the string orchestra from organ, you're going to very easily have a very busy first violin section, and then there's a seconds, violas, cellos, basses are really bored out of their minds, right? So you want to kind of redistribute, if you can, and then that takes a lot of creativity because that means often you either have to put the cellos or violas in their extreme range to be above the first violin, or have a different voicing so that you find ways to voice the melody so that it's not buried under these soprano instruments. Rehan, you had a question.
Oh yeah, my question was when you're choosing, it was just a question of curiosity, but when you're choosing pieces like this that are not violin centric, don't you also have to think about like concert sales and stuff? And don't people usually like prefer the more mainstream violin centric pieces that everyone knows?
Sure, absolutely. And so it's always a balancing act, right? Because if you pick, so once we had a guest conductor that said, well, I really want to program like pieces that are like features our low instruments. So I want to schedule pieces that features the violas and cellos. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And then they came up with the program that had two pieces out of four that didn't use the violins at all. And I'm thinking, that's like 35 people in our orchestra. You can't do that. Like, what are you thinking? So, but of course, there, in terms of my balancing act, is a little different than if I was conducting a professional orchestra that has a paying public, right?
Right.
So if that was the case, then I would be worrying a bit more about the audience experience, right? But for me, actually, I could care less about that because I really care about the student experience in the orchestra. That is a primary importance to me in terms of my consideration of programming. So if that means we have a program that is not particularly interesting to the audience, but is very interesting to our members in the orchestra, I have no problem with going with that program, right? But often then it's not so black and white like that, right? Because when you have a piece that's interesting to the audience, that's also interesting to the orchestra, right? So that usually is in line with things like that, right? But then I'm also, so there's an additional element of, I'm trying to make the experience as broad and educational as possible for the orchestra. So, if it was really about sort of popularity contest of composers, then, we might just do like John Williams and like video game pieces all the time. But then that'll be like eating candy all the time for your meals, right? So I try to have a broad musical experience where we have contemporary music, where we have pieces by underrepresented composers, we have pieces that are the warhorse masterworks, right? That everybody wants to play, right? So it's sort of always a balancing act of what is the equation that'll engage the orchestra fully and as many of the orchestra members as possible, right? But at the same time, serving all of those functions of serving the composers in our department, our student composers, our faculty composers, serving contemporary music in general, where our orchestral repertoire doesn't just become a museum sort of curation, right? So it's a lot of sort of things to consider. And once you start pulling on the threads, it becomes a really complicated ball of yarn that you're pulling, right? Okay, Alec, you had a question?
You mostly answered it. I was going to ask about how do you balance like, if you're saying like there's tuba in the group, there's a saxophone in the group, how do you balance that with like, if you're trying to include them, you're not going to find a lot of pieces written for 1870, right?
Right.
That include these pieces, but you might want to include Beethoven in your orchestral repertoire.
Right. So, I mean, in my first teaching position in Quincy, Illinois, I had a strange orchestra because I had our usual set of strings. But then I had all these unusual instruments that are not usually part of the orchestra, like euphonium. We had an amazing euphonium player who could like play the pants off of like anybody. So basically, what I ended up doing so we had a euphonium player who was phenomenal. We had basically a saxophone section, and then and we had one horn and 5 percussionists. And 3 of them were really good mallet players. One was like a drum set fiend, but he couldn't play anything else. So like I was like, oh, okay. So what I ended up doing was I racked my brains trying to find the piece that was written for that combination. Of course, there isn't anything like that. So an American in Paris sort of fit the bill, but what I basically ended up doing was I ended up arranging parts from traditional repertoire, but where it would allow our euphonium player, our saxophone section, and our mallet players to be able to be part of that. So I did like almost every piece we did that year. It was like it was transcriptions, right? So the purist would sort of say, "Oh, what are you doing?" But I mean, as an orchestra, we had a great time learning this repertoire, and so part of your picture as you go out into different situations most likely will mean some sort of arrangements, transcriptions, and the adaptation of repertoire that you have to do. And Cornell's weird because like 220 people show up for auditions, and I'm usually I don't have to like rearrange things unless somebody shows up like well, I haven't had this, but if a mandolin player shows up and I want to play in the orchestra, then I would try to figure out a way to do that and include that person as long as they meet the musical ability, right? Okay, so I'm being sidetracked, and so I do want to get to 3 things today. One is continue our Dandolo exercise, and we'll do a quick Dandolo exercise. And then I want to review Beethoven 6 and preview Beethoven 5 first movement. And I think Beethoven 5 first movement is going to be our sort of culminating conducting project because it is the most challenging, as you'll see. And then I want to have some time talking about the different seasons people have come up with. And you have come up with some really, really interesting programs. So I do want us to kind of engage with that as well. Okay, so let's first go to the Dandolo. And let's see, I'm going to do a advanced share. There we go.
Also, Professor, what are these videos do? The Dandelion and the Beethoven 5?
So the Beethoven 6
is you tonight, yeah.
Yeah. There we go. I haven't put the assignment module up there in, where'd it go? So Beethoven 6 is due today. So what I'll probably do is give you time for Beethoven 5, because I want to have today and next week to have sort of in-class sessions on Mondays where I give you help. So what I'll probably do is, rather than have it due next Monday, and I don't want to have it due during your finals, so I will make it due you guys already have like a couple assignments due on December 2. So can I make it due November 30?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so that's what I'll do. Okay. Try to do it before you go away don't go away but before break. Okay. All right. And I'll make a module there. Okay. So, but let's go back to the Dandolo. All right. I believe we did 31. Let's do 31. We'll each take 2 lines, 2 lines here, 2 lines here, 2 line. Well, actually, somebody lucky gets to do 3 lines, and then we'll do 33. Okay. All right. So we'll start 31, first 2 lines. Peter, why don't you go? 15 seconds of scanning. All right, Peter, you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Do, fa, re, sol, la, sol.
Can you actually provide
do.
your own metronome?
Sorry, I don't know if the clicks are coming through.
Oh, it's not coming through.
Is this?
It's not coming through.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
All right. You might have to just believe me.
Okay, all right.
Um,
Actually, why don't you conduct so we can see it visually?
oh, okay. Maybe we'll just do bool. Okay. Triple like do.
Sure, that's good.
Okay. Do, fa, re, sol, mi, la, sol, do. Mi, la, fa, sol, do, mi, re, la, do, sol, la, mi. Mi, do, re, sol, mi, la, ti, re, so, la, fa, do, mi, re, sol, mi, la, re, sol, do.
Okay, so really good trying to keep going, right? And rather than going back, right? But we're still hesitating quite a bit. And in fact, if I have to sort of have a gauge of how much tension you are in your brain, sort of holding your back in terms of tension, causing you to be stuck while brain is trying to engage, it's really you're traveling through really muddy field. All right, so you want to have flow as much as possible, even at a slower tempo like this. Try not to have a reactive pause, right? If you can't verbalize it, just let it drop it and go on and perceive the next beat that you can, right? And what we want to try to do is try to have a you're trying to push your brain to see 3 notes at a time. Dum, bi, do, fa, re, sol, mi, la, sol, do, si, re, do, fa. You're really perceiving at least beat at a time, and then your eyes are moving on to the next beat as you say though. Mi, la, sol, fa, do, mi, re, la, do. So you're looking ahead as soon as you see 3 notes, okay, and you're really allowing this flow to experience the flow, right? Because the more you think note by note and you hesitate, it's going to prevent from your eye of moving, pushing your perception to be faster. So in a way, one of the main things we're trying to achieve is just like when we train for speed reading, you're trying to push your brain to say, okay, I don't have to read one note at a time, one word at a time, right? I can perceive the sentence, the 3-word sentence. Boom, 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 right? Otherwise, you'll be sort of stuck at this lower gear, right? We're trying to engage that higher gear where you can perceive things in larger field of notes. Okay. All right. Last 2 lines of 31. Rehan.
All right. A E G D A C B F A E G D G E B G C F G C F G C A E C G E C G D B E C E G C E A G C A F C G D G C A E B C E G C.
Excellent. So you notice in the second line, by the time you got to the 5th beat, there was a little bit of starting to hesitation. Your brain got a little tired, right?
Yeah.
The first line, you're really great. You're looking ahead, very focused. But as you went along, there's sort of this focus fatigue, what I call, right?
Yeah.
Where you start to lose, and you can feel your brain sort of slowing it down a little bit, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
really try to push through that, where you really, and this is a matter of just repetition, but not just rote repetition, but focused repetition. You're really trying to train your brain to perceive things at a higher gear, right?
Mhm.
So try to you were absolutely looking ahead. I could feel that there was no sort of hesitation or muck in the first line. But as you got to the second line, third, fourth, fifth beat, there was starting to be chatter or something was sort of pulling your focus down.
Yeah, definitely. No,
Yeah.
just tired, I guess. Like,
Yeah. Okay. So keep working it. I think you can afford to go a little faster. Okay, because here's the thing that happens, at least for me, when I slow things down too much in terms of these exercises of trying to perceive things. When I slow things down, other chatter enters my mind
Yeah.
rather than being able to focus on the task at hand, right? So when that other chatter enters, then I lose that focus to really focus on the notes that are coming up, right? So sometimes a little bit faster speed where you really don't have any time to think about any other thing, right?
Right.
Whether what's going to be breakfast or whatever, right? So I would recommend for you, Rehan, going just a bit faster,
Will
and
do.
not a whole lot faster, maybe 2 clicks on the metronome faster.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Amy, 32, first 2 lines.
Okay. Beep. Oh wait, that's too fast.
Yeah.
Um. E B E B G D A E C G E A E B C F B E A D B F C G D G D A D G A D G G E B D A E D A G C D G B E A D G E C G A D G.
Yeah. So Amy, you have to really allow yourself not to be perfect. Okay. So when you miss a note, let it drop it, because if you do what you did on the fourth beat of second line, then there's going to be this sense, I got to go back, and then you're going to be that much behind, right? So if there's a traffic accident or whatever happens, drop the. I don't know why there's an echo, but move on to the next beat.
Okay.
I think two ways I would recommend for you, Amy. Be more conscious about what your tempo will be throughout, because I'm not really sure you know where your optimal perception speed is. You yourself are not aware of that. So try to pick a tempo that you know you'll be able to execute with less than 3 errors, right? And then start there as a baseline. And then you can start to move up from there. Okay, rather than starting too fast and then having to go back. All right, so start more conservatively in picking a tempo that you know you can execute, not flawlessly, but maybe 1 or 2 errors. Okay. All right. Let's go to 33. Alec.
I should probably preview before I start the
Sure.
clock. All right.
Okay.
C A G E D C B G F D B G C E G E D C B G E D B G F D B B C G E C G E C G E E D B G B C A G E C A G.
Okay.
That's 2
So,
lines.
curious, Alec, for you, the mental fatigue occurred at the same point, fifth beat of the second line as well, right? So, it's this thing where in the preview session, right, if you're sort of previewing the first line, then you already have a chance to kind of like preview that first line. But the second line is really jumping in at you, right? So in the 15 seconds, what you cannot do is actually go in real time speed the first line and preview what the notes is. But you should have a much wider eagle point of view rather than chicken vision point of view, where you're scanning the whole two lines in the 15 seconds and noticing, oh, that second line, third, fourth, fifth beat, that's really wonky, right? You might not even identify exactly what the notes are, but note that it's no longer scalar like the first line, right? So you're trying to give yourself some kind of a way to grab onto the shape of the line, right? Because just by looking at further away, right, you can perceive that the first line is much easier because there's a lot more scalar notes, whereas second line of 33 has a lot more jagged back zigzag kind of shapes, right? So right away, I would have focused into this area, beat 2, 3, 4 during my 15 seconds, right? So use the 15-second preview as a way to see what are the larger patterns that you can perceive, right? Okay, EJ, last line of 33 and first line of 34. And Alec, I would go a little faster for you. All right, here we go.
So re si fa do la mi do si. Oh, I think I went a little bit too fast. So re si fa re la mi do so re mi do re sa do si re re mi do. So re si mi do la do re si mi do re mi re si so mi so si re da do si so si.
Okay, so two things. I think you really, I'm gonna give you permission to fail. Okay, you don't have to be perfect. Okay, it's in fact, it's if you do it this way, where you keep hesitating, going back, it's going to be harder for you to remember where the mistakes occurred and what kind of mistakes are occurring. Okay, so don't correct your mistake. Only observe and make a note which mistake it is. Is it a reaction? Is it an anticipation? Is it a look back? Okay, but give yourself permission to fail, because what we're trying to do is we're not trying to go back and fix and be perfect. We're trying to figure out how our brain functions. That is the primary importance of these exercises, right? So it is meaningless to go back and fix things because you're already not with the orchestra anymore. Okay, so when you're conducting, if something occurs, if you go back while the orchestra is going on to play, then you're not with the orchestra anymore. So the whole point is to stay with the pulse. That is really important, because as you conduct, you're going to have to figure out a way to conduct and have a sort of conversation in your head. Okay, in the second violin, what happened there, right? But if you go back while you're conducting, okay, stop. Then you have to basically stop every time there's a mistake. Right? And we're trying to cultivate a way to be able to perceive things on the fly while the orchestra is going, so that when you do stop, you have cataloged 3 or 4 mistakes rather than stopping for every error, right? You know how frustrating it is for conductors to stop every time something happens, right? Well, how much more efficient would you be as a conductor if you could catalog, okay, this happened to the trumpets in the second beat, that happens to the clarinet, ooh, violas are up there. And okay, now we got 5 things. Okay, let's stop after that 8-bar phrase. These are the things that happen. Clarinets, second clarinet, trumpet, horn. Boom, let's go. Again, then you just saved probably 5 minutes of that rehearsal. So imagine a conductor who is able to address things 3, 4 issues at a time, each time they stop, while covering more music, versus a conductor who stops after everything, every item, every small item, right? And you're given a finite amount of time on Earth. So if you're using that time inefficiently, then you're not going to get far. And that goes for your practice session, that goes for your studies, that goes for your reading. I mean, if you have a 35-page reading assignment and you're reading one word out loud at a time, and then you don't pay attention, okay, for like 3 sentences. Oh crap, what did I just read? And you got to go back and read that again. You're just wasting time, right? So in the same way, if you go back for every mistake, you're going to become less efficient. You're going to become unable to perceive what are the errors that I'm making. So how can I adjust my perception? Okay, I am giving you permission to fail. Don't go back for wrong notes. Okay, that for you and Amy is really crucial. Okay, all right, Rachel.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Snapping. Okay. A F A G E D F E C B D A C B D B E F D G E G E F A F B G C A D B G B D C A F E G G D F F D G B G E C C.
Almost, Rachel. So same thing with you, okay? Don't be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Whoever told you to be perfect, tell them to get out of the room, okay? So allow yourself to fail and just throw the notes out that you can't perceive and move on to the next beat, okay? So that way it becomes a clear spot. Okay, there I have trouble with that particular kind of intervals, okay? All right. When you had flow, it was really, really wonderful. Okay, you're perceiving a next beat at a time. Okay. When you preview the first these two lines, what are the two biggest items you or sections that you identified?
I identified especially in the second line, like the middle part where there's kind of a lot of jumps. I was cautious about that one.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the really high note, the D.
Yeah. So imagine if you were saying that to the orchestra before they played it, right? More specific you can be, right? Rather than second line in the middle, there's a come jagged notes. The orchestra's like, yeah, right? So you want to be as specific as possible, because we are also, this is also a microcosm of the macro, right? We're practicing how we say things, how we offer solutions to the orchestra, right? The more vague you are, the least helpful it is. The more specific you are, the more helpful it is, right? And so that goes the same for you to be able to take 3 items, right? You only have 15 seconds to preview, right? So when you have the 15 seconds to preview, don't say, okay, in the second line, there's a weird part in the middle. That's really not helpful. He's like, we know, right? So find out a way, okay, those are sequence of 6 that goes down, right? So then it's a very specific idea that you have to, okay, those are 6s going down. Make sense? All right. So practice saying something to the orchestra that is going to be constructive and helpful, that's very specific, that they can use to get through that passage, right? So we are practicing how to verbalize musical ideas in an efficient manner, right? I can't tell you how many times people, my mentors, orchestra members told me, Chris, you talk too much, right? Say it in half the amount of words. Okay, now half. Again, half. I had a conducting teacher who was like ruthless about this. He would sort of have us conduct and then stop and say, okay, what's the primary problem to fix? And then of course, I would start like giving a thesis. And it's like, okay, you've identified the correct item, but now say it in half the words. Then I would say it in half the words. Good. Now say it in 3 words. I'm like, what? That's impossible. But then he kept saying less words. Because as soon as you say 3 sentences to the orchestra, they have checked out. Okay? They might hear the first 4 words and then they're gone. They're not listening to you anymore. They're talking about what's for lunch, whatever. Okay? So the more efficient you can be, and you have to practice that. And I'm obviously having verbal hemorrhage right now. Okay. All right. Now, let's go to I don't want to run out of time. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Beethoven 5 because Beethoven 5 first movement is very tricky for a number of reasons. Here, let's go to the score. Okay, so this is a terrible score, by the way, but it does the job in reducing to 5 parts. So one of the biggest challenge is the fermatas, these damn fermatas, okay? And then the second challenge is the hypermeter concept. Raise your hand if you know what I mean by hypermeter. Anyone? Okay. So usually so far we've been introduced to concepts where, Beethoven 6 is basically in 4, but within each beat there's a triplet eighth notes, right? Now in Beethoven 5 first movement, it's all in one. So rather than ba 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 ba, sort of conducting quarter notes, we're conducting half note pulse, right? Da 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 da. So each bar is basically a pulsation, right? But rather than being a series of ones, da 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 ba 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 ba. Right? So rather than all being one without a hierarchy, what Beethoven is actually doing is he's putting in a hierarchy of a 4/4. Right? So there's a bar with 4 half notes. Right? So the pulsation of each beat, each half note, it makes up a hypermeter. So 4 of the bars makes up 1 hypermeter bar. Okay. Now, so then how do you determine where is 1? Where's the upbeat? Where's the downbeat? All right. And there are many controversy about what the fermatas do to the hypermeter. So one of the things I would like you to do is analyze the score and decide where the hypermeters occur. All right. So one of the things you have to determine is da 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 dee ba 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 bee. This figure, you have to figure out whether this bar is 1 or this bar is 1. Right. So is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or is it 4, 1, 2, 3? Right. And then what does the fermata do to that hypermeter? Does it extend it? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1? Or is it doesn't matter? Okay. So rather than give you the answers, I want you to try to wrestle with that, because it's sort of when I first tried to do this hypermeter analysis, it was really I would come up with one thing and then it wouldn't work in another part, right? So I want you to wrestle with that idea, right? But let me give you a couple hints, okay? I do think da 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 dee ba 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 bee. This motive is a pickup motive. I think it makes more sense that way. It doesn't make sense to me to have 1 and da 2, 3 and da 4. That doesn't make sense to me, right? And there are a couple points where it's definitely a pickup. So I think this second violin part, ba 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 bee, here's 4 1, 2 3 4 1 2 3. That makes sense to me, right? So there are going to be places where, okay, definitely this first bar is a pickup bar. Definitely this bar is a pickup bar, right? So try to map out the hypermeter system. Now, there will be, what does Beethoven do when he sets up a rule? And why does he set up a rule? To break it, right? So he's not going to be like Haydn, where he sets up a joke for the punchline, which comes in line of a 4-bar phrase, right? He's going to set up a hypermeter in four bars, where there are places he says, but here it is not a 4-bar phrase. Here it might be a 6-bar phrase, or here it might be a 5-bar phrase, right? So, and to give you a hint, a 5-bar phrase is a really unusual event. Okay, so if you can find the 5-bar phrase in the first movement, I will give you bonus points. I don't know how I'm going to give you the bonus points, but anyway. All right, but I would love for you to think about that challenge of figuring out what the hypermeter is and go through the analysis of marking where the hypermeters occur, where the upbeat is, okay? And I would really urge you to do it on your own before going to another resource. You can go to Bernstein Score in the New York Philharmonic Archive and figure out what his hypermeter is. You can go to Gunther Schuller's Complete Conductor book and figure out what his hypermeter system is. And you can even go to, there are a couple of YouTube videos where they spell out what the hypermeter and what their analysis is. But I would love for you to struggle through that on your own and figure out the hypermeter chart on your own, right? Because then it'll actually make, you'll find that you'll be on one of two sides. Okay, Rachel, you had a question.
So when the hypermeter changes within the piece, are we supposed to change our conducting pattern to fit that? Or
So okay, so here's a question that I've asked about hypermeters, how to conduct hypermeters. It is not the kind of conducting where you conduct a clear 4 pattern, right? Because that's actually going to confuse the orchestra a lot more. So you don't want to be conducting. They don't want to see that because that's going to actually confuse the hell out of them. Okay, what you want to actually do is sort of infer in your own grouping. Okay, so it might look like this. So in your head, in your own mind, you are clear where the 4 is, but that doesn't necessarily have to be clear. Here's a 4 pattern. Here's a 6 pattern. Does that make sense? All right, it's for your own organization of this piece.
so should the players also be having this organization in their head? Is that
Yeah,
something?
so I've seen parts where Bernstein and Gunther Schuller's, where they've sort of marked out so in the parts they would do something like, I'm just gonna do it random. I'm not saying this is the hypermeter, okay? They might just go like this, a 4-bar hypermeter, right? Just in the part. So the players would see that marking in the part there, and oh, okay, that's a hypermeter. Make sense? Okay. So I want you to go through the first movement and map out your hypermeter. Okay, and once you mapped it out, I want you to go and find other resources like the Bernstein Score in the New York Philharmonic Archive and see what his hypermeter marking is. Okay. Now let's talk about the sfumatos. In conducting these sfumatos, there are mainly 2 issues, much the similar way we talked about the sfumatos in Beethoven 2 first movement. Okay, so because the tempo is so fast, one option is to do this. Da 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 da. Now that's the easy cop-out version, okay? Because you're basically adding a bar where there isn't a bar. So look, da 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 da, off, da 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 da, right? So you're adding, when you do a full cutoff, you just added a whole bar. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. So there, what you're doing is, the cutoff is the downbeat. So you have to prepare that cutoff and downbeat in a particular way. So if you do it this way, da 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 da, da 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 da, nobody will know what you're doing. Da 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 da, da 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 da. So you're really communicating, and especially to the people going on, like the second violins, saying, we're going to go on, get ready. Now, what does the second violin have to do then? Because if you throw this at them when they're expecting, ba 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 ba, ba 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 bum. Da, 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 da. That's really easy to do. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Versus da 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 da. Da 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 da. Right? They have to be ready for that. So, in some ways, if you do the cutoff is the downbeat, you have to make sure there is a very active beat that makes them go on, right? It's as if orchestra is not a horse, but it's as if you gave an extra whip to the horse. Okay. I should stop using that analogy because I'm gonna get in trouble. Anyway, so can we all try this? We're just gonna conduct the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars, right? So you're gonna negotiate. We're gonna do two kinds. First, we're gonna do it with the cutoff. All right. So ba 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 off, da 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 off, da 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 da, and then give the upbeat. All right. So we are gonna do a version. First version is do the cutoff, and then give an upbeat, downbeat. Okay. All right. So let's all do it together. How do I see everybody? There we go. Okay. All right, here we go. I'll conduct with you. Actually, let's just do one hand. No, let's do both hands. Okay. You're going to cut off with your left hand. Okay. Ready? Ready. And da 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 off. Da 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 off. Da 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 da. Okay. Now, question about the second time. That extra bar that you have, right? Why did he write it that way? Why didn't he just do da 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 di fermata, da 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 di fermata? But why did he put da 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 di da 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 extra bar fermata? Why is that? Anybody? Rehan.
Is it because he's going from fortissimo to piano, so it adds more surprise because there's a huge pause, and then you just come in again with like really top notes?
Okay, maybe, but the dynamic actually doesn't change between the first fermata and the second fermata.
Yeah. Oh, just saying like it adds emphasis and then he comes in with a soft thing, maybe.
I mean, we're talking about the extra bar, right? So even if you're doing, it's either way a surprise, right? So
yeah.
Why is there an extra bar here?
Maybe he wanted to make clear that D should be longer than the previous C.
Okay, that's a very substantive idea, but it's basically longer by a beat, right? So the only difference between this and this, the fact that it's instead of sol mi fa re, it's a bar longer rather than fermata fermata. What else?
It also says that's like the minimum value, I guess.
Minimum value. Okay. All right. I would suggest it has something to do with the hypermeter.
Is it because he wanted to prevent the idea of a 4-bar hypermeter just from the get-go, where it forces at least the idea of 5 bars?
Okay. Good, Peter. He's suggesting already that the 5-bar idea, right, or that the idea that this is not going to be an even 4-bar phrased idea, right? So by inserting that extra bar, he's already setting up for the momentous 5-bar phrase. Okay, so think of it less as it's extending somehow, because in reality of da pa pa pi pa 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 pi, I think that extra bar, I don't think it makes that much of a difference for the audience to perceive. I don't think when I first looked at the score, that bar really surprised me because I've never heard that. I've never heard a difference where an orchestra says, okay, we're going to make this second fermata longer. Right? I've really never heard that. Where I heard a difference between pa 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 pi, pa 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 pi. da 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 da, da 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 da. I don't think I've ever heard that, right? So either you have to make this fermata much longer than prescribed to make the audience hear the difference between in terms of length, right? So in that sense, if you do make the second fermata perceivably longer, then you're actually adding a lot more time because you're defining these two fermatas as two different animals, right? So the length of this extra bar doesn't justify making the second fermata longer, in my opinion, because there's nothing like if you had said lunga or something, some extra wording on the second fermata. Okay, then I can see that. But then why didn't you just do that rather than adding this extra bar? Okay, so I think there are two ways that he is emphasizing the specialness of a 5-bar phrase that we're going to encounter later in the movement. Okay, but secondly, he is also concerned about the effect of the hypermeter. Okay, and so that's related to making this, as Peter said, not even square. Da 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 da. So you have to in your mind think of that two fermatas, okay, almost identical, but the second one is slightly longer, right? Just enough that the audience feels, I don't know where we are in the beat. Okay, I don't know whether this is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4, 1, 2, 3, right? So, because if you go with the idea, it's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That doesn't make sense because if you did it 4, 1. So let me make it a little clearer. So if you do 4, annotate 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. No, this has to be 4, right? For that to be 1, right? So then, okay, so 4, 1, 2, because the fermata is longer. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right. So, have fun. It'll be fun. I had this Beethoven 5 score where I crossed out so many numbers. I had this Allegro con brio was like it became erased out of the page because I kept going back and forth. Okay, Peter, you had a question?
Oh, sorry, no, I did not.
Okay. Rachel.
Yeah. Question. So sometimes when I hear a recording of this piece, I hear people play like da 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 instead of
Yes.
So I didn't realize that in the score it actually has like an eighth note rest there. So that was interesting.
Yeah. So that's one of those things where I think this idea of fate motive, this is called a fate motive all the time, right? So people have inserted extra musical ideas into, this is a piece has so many layers of tradition laid onto it. Like during World War II, it was the victory sort of idea, right? So I think it's dangerous to put those other layers into the music when he obviously had not thought of that as bum 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 be bum 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 be. I think thankfully most of the orchestras now think of that as antiquated idea and a way of expressing this piece, right? Because in that way, if he really wanted a different, then he would. If I was a composer, then if that's what I wanted, I would have put the Allegro con brio here, right, rather than the beginning. And he clearly wanted da 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 dee da 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 dee this idea because when it repeats, where do I go? Do we get to do the repeat? We don't. Okay. In the let's see, in the score, original score, the repeat bar, there's a 3-bar phrase, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 and a 1. So it completes that sentence. I just gave you the answer. Okay, so think about, but that's a great question because many people have interpreted this opening differently. And I would argue sometimes that came about as a programmatic idea of emphasizing the fate motive, but also because it is technically easier to do that. Right? Dun 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 dee. Dun 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 dee. That's much easier than the other way, right? And I think anytime you make Beethoven easier to play, you're doing Beethoven's music a disservice, right? One of my mentors talked about Beethoven's music should feel like it's cliff diving, right? Dynamics go right up to the cliff. There is no sense of ba 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 bee, ba 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 ba. I think that's the kind of safe way, making Beethoven like Haydn, where you make it easier and less revolutionary and less extreme to get from fortissimo to piano. And it's really da 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 da. It's this extreme of idea that makes Beethoven so difficult to perform. Okay, and that makes it so difficult to conduct because you have to convey that sense of fortissimo going all the way to the end of that bar, and then all of a sudden you have to switch gears to piano. Okay, so can we try a version where we're doing the fermatas and the downbeat in combined, right? So the first version we did cut off, da 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 da, cut off, and I would just as a rule, this extra bar I would actually just show because that's what orchestras are quite used to. If you do ba 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 ba, they'll go, hey, where's the extra bar? Okay, so da 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 da. Okay, let's try that, everybody. So no, we're combining the cutoff and the downbeat of the third bar, and then the pickup to this right here. Okay, here we go. Da 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 da. So here's what's important. If you go from a dead beat, da 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 da, then you have to do a cutoff, right? So at the end of the fermata, you can't be down. You have to be starting to ready to cut off and do the downbeat. Da 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 da. If you're stuck, da 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 da, then you're stuck. You can't do anything. What are you gonna do? So da 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 da. Now, two contrasting. So fortissimo, fortissimo, da 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 da. So if you're not careful, that second fermata, it's very easy to show a diminuendo, right? So you have to somehow show sustain, don't get softer, and then da 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 da. So because if you go da, that's going to be a forte in the second violin. So da 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 da. So it has to be a sudden switch to the piano dynamic. All right, can we do it one more time? Ready? And then da 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 da. Okay, can I see it? Can we see it one at a time? Who wants to go first? Peter. Okay, not bad. But you sped up into the piano, right? Because you're trying to change, right? So think of the plane changing rather than come down here. So all of a sudden, so that's an exception to, because every time we talked about, here's a contract, I'll come back to the contract, right? Right, but here, the contract, you kind of change a little bit. Pa, da 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 da. Otherwise, you have to go, right? And that looks too much like a forte, even though there's no rebound. Yeah, okay. All right. EJ. Okay, so don't play chicken with the empty bar, right? So the empty bar, right? Yam ba is really a separate event. But if you make it too active, right? It's like sort of an opera bar where you just marking the bar, right? It's da 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 da. So you don't make such a big event, so it feels like oh my god, right? Ba 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 da 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 da. Because we don't want too much things happening because of that empty bar, right? So think of that empty bar as, all right, there's the empty bar. Next one. Da 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 da. Okay, Alec. Perfect, except you really shortchanged the fermatas. So I would hold the fermatas just a bit longer. One more time. Okay, much better. Except if you do such a high rebound, right? It's as if you told the orchestra, okay, I'm not holding the sound anymore. So da 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 rather than da 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 da. Make sense? So you're really holding the sound. Da 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 da. Yeah, Rachel.
Da 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 da. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When you stop singing on the second fermata, you already also gave this sort of indication of release of energy or weakening of energy. So da 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 da. So try to hold the sound, extend the sound. Otherwise, you get da 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 da. Make sense?
Yeah, just a question. So usually you should show the character of the next note on the upbeat of, or sorry, yeah, the upbeat, but like in this case you can't do-
Exactly, because we're doing cliff diving. Because if you show the character of the upcoming piano, then you're going to suggest to the orchestra, hey, quiet. So they're going to all go quiet.
Okay.
Yeah. Rachel, one more time.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba.
Okay, be careful that we're not making this eighth note pa-pa-pa-pee, a crunched figure. Da-da-da-dee, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Think really be empathetic to all the string players and the clarinet player who's playing da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. So if you do too much of da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, right? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, you have to carry that eighth notes in your upbeat. Okay? I'm giving you too much answers. Amy. Very good. Except I would also say your sustain needs to be a little more powerful because it became sort of bum, bum, right? So you have to really insist because they will, if the orchestra will tend to not give you that fortissimo. Okay, one more time. Insist on the fortissimo sostenuto of that fermata. It was about 50% better, but there will still be orchestra members who are quite not sure if you want the sostenuto. Okay, so really ask for the fortissimo sostenuto and look right at the clarinet player. One more time. be careful that the second fermata is somehow not shorter. If anything, it's got to be a little bit longer. Okay. If you look at the original score, it's weird. It's the entire string section and clarinet. Huh? And nobody ever hears the clarinet, right? So you have to really look at the clarinet. It's like, yep, you, please more. Okay. All right. Rehan. Right. Remember, we're showing that extra bar, right? So da 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 da.
All right. Da, 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 da.
Don't rush the eighth notes. If you do that, if you think that, they will. It's amazing. Orchestras read your mind. If you think da 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 da, they will rush da 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 da.
Da, 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 da.
I would still say you gotta really think da 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 da. It's a really different feeling if you think da 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 ba 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 bee ba 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 bee. We're getting slower, right? Ba 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 bee ba 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 bee ba 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 bee ba 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 bee. That might be too fast. Where's 108? This is a weird tempo because 108 seems like it's fast, but it's not. And it seems like it's slow, but it's not. Okay, one more time.
It's
what?
It's 108 to the crotchet or to the minimum?
The half note.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. So. Da, 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 oh. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, your first set of eighth notes was still rushing, but the second set was perfect. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So keep working on that. Okay. I would say it's on every audition list for young conductors because it's so complicated and tricky to navigate. Okay. All right. And you have to really know the entrances because otherwise I saw this one conductor conducting this and they're basically looking at the wrong place after the beat, right? So there we go. Seconds. Oh, not, yeah, already. Crap. So you have to kind of seconds viola first, second viola first. You have to kind of practice naming the parts. Otherwise, you will not be looking at the right place because it goes by so fast. Okay. All right. Oh my goodness, 7 minutes. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the programs. So I'm missing from a few folks.
Yeah, mine's not in yet, Professor.
Yeah, so get those in, okay?
Yeah.
Let's see. We have one from Rachel, one from EJ, one from Amy. Let's talk about Amy's first because she was the first one to get it in. And so Amy, do you want to talk us through your programs a little bit?
Just like my thought process, or
well, so if you want to highlight any particular program, because they were all really wonderful, but what you were thinking in terms of what you want to achieve with these programs?
Well, I pulled up like a list of like pretty commonly performed things, and then just a list of things that had been performed recently.
Okay.
And I tried to find things that weren't commonly performed, and I tried to get some female composers.
Yeah.
And there was like this one concert that I focused mainly on Chinese composers, for example, because we've been talking about diverse repertoire. So
absolutely, yeah. So what I loved was couple things. I thought this is a great program that brought in four Chinese composers. Chen Yu, who's based in the U.S., but it featured a pipa or erhu soloist. So I thought this was a really wonderful program that featured butterfly violin concerto, which a lot of people know already if you're a violinist. And these are pieces like I don't know this piece at all, so I'm very very curious to find out more about the Great Wall Symphony. This kind of thing I absolutely love, right? So that was a great program. I also love the young person's concert, where it's sort of celebrating the 250th year of Beethoven, and you had excerpts from Eroica, Piano Concerto Number 5, and Symphony Number 5. And obviously, you would perform excerpts at different movements. You would probably have some sort of narration, right? Yeah. So I thought this was really ideal. In terms of your Pops concert, it was a video game themed. So I thought that was also a nice variety of video game music. Some of which I wasn't aware of at all. So that's I'm always like happy when students sort of highlight music that I don't know. So bravo on that. Okay. Okay, let's go to Yijay's programs. So I believe Yijay had sort of a pandemic answer. So most of his programs are smaller orchestra forces, right?
Yeah. So, the idea I had in mind was like having a season opening and a season closing like concert as normal, but like during the season having some more like smaller orchestras pieces. So
yeah,
I actually like just I didn't explore a lot of like very uncommon repertoire because like I feel I'm personally not so familiar with those repertoire, and I don't think like I know them well enough to include them here. So like for the two small orchestras, I think the idea I have like the first one is just like considering a smaller orchestra. Like I actually like looked into what like the Berlin Philharmonic did like during the pandemic, like what they, so I believe the Mahler's one they did like at their Europe concert this year.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great thing for us to do, like, because when we are thinking about small orchestras, we are thinking about Baroque pieces, we're thinking about like pieces that are written for string orchestras, but we're not thinking about Mahler symphonies. So I think that's a great idea to do. And also like for the third one, I was thinking like because I did that like the last in the full masterworks, and like whenever in the first three, I feel like I was doing like too much of a traditional repertoire. So I was thinking like maybe having a more avant-garde or like 20th century works. So
yeah, great. And we've done the Rameau at Cornell, so that's a fun piece. So I'm glad you found that piece as well. Two comments I would say. I think the Erwin Stein chamber arrangement. Arnold Schoenberg had this musical society where he arranged Debussy's L'Après-midi d'Enfant and many pieces for this weird sort of a smaller orchestra. Mahler also has the Songs of a Wayfarer, which has been arranged for almost the same forces. So these are sets of concerts arranged by Schoenberg and Webern and his contemporaries in Vienna, where they put together these sort of salon concerts. And it's actually really interesting repertoire that should be revisited. There are a couple of doctoral theses on the series. If you do a search on Schoenberg arrangements of pieces, it's a whole slew of, I think there are 20 or 30 pieces in that repertoire list. So that is absolutely things that can be explored during this time where we have to we see lots of orchestras practicing physical distances. LA Phil is having the Sound and Stage series, which is all pieces that they fit on the Hollywood Bowl, but they're spread out. So the maximum number of musicians they have is about 30. So Berlin Philharmonic, as you just said, is also doing similar things. So the orchestras that are coming back are doing so in smaller form chamber pieces. So this is or sort of outdoor installation kind of things. Right? Okay, so great job. And then let's go to Rachel's programs. So Rachel also considered a concert featuring just the strings. I don't know of this version, but Candide, of course, is a really great piece. Gershwin's Lullaby is a really beautiful piece as well. Of course, Barber's Adagio is a huge hit that Toscanini premiered. It was originally his string quartet, slow movement. And then, of course, Copland's Appalachian Spring, which the Cornell Orchestra has done multiple times as well. So that's a great concert where you can do social distancing. And then we have a Pops concert, sort of a Christmas-centered program. I don't know this suite, but I'm sure it's lots of Christmas gems. Do you want to talk about this program a little bit, Rachel?
Yeah, so I kind of went based off on the Daniels Orchestra Music Library, and I couldn't find like a bunch of famous Pops pieces, so I kind of struggled and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And then I went on IMSLP and saw some Christmas stuff, so just use that stuff.
Yeah, another great resource in terms of holiday music is Lux Music. They have a lot of holiday music arranged by many different arrangers. Lucas Richmond, who is a conductor but also a really active arranger, has done a lot of arrangements. The Eastman in Rochester, there's a Pops conductor. I can't remember his name now, but he's sort of your go-to holiday orchestra arranger as well. One of the greatest things I've seen is the Wynton Marsalis's Jazz for Lincoln Center Orchestra combined with the New York Philharmonic to do Nutcracker, but it was a Duke Ellington arrangement of Nutcracker. So I thought that was a particularly awesome piece because it has all these great tunes from Nutcracker, but it's arranged by Duke Ellington, who's one of the greatest orchestrator in American music. So that was that's sort of an amazing example of orchestras kind of looking towards jazz to be inspired. Because in Europe, that all the tradition of orchestral music being inspired by folk music or national material, that was already an existing phenomena. And I think Dvorak himself said that American composers should look to folk music, and now many composers are looking to not only jazz but rock and roll and popular music to influence their output. And then this one, this is a great piece. If you don't know it already, everybody, Death in the Maiden. Very, very difficult to pull off as a whole string orchestra because it's a very challenging piece. But it's a great piece for the orchestra. And Mahler actually changed a few things, added a bass part, so that that version is also available. Of course, Berg Lyric Suite is a masterpiece, but sometimes when you program one of the three Viennese composers like Webern or Schoenberg and Berg, audiences run away. But I think this particular piece is a beautiful piece that should be played more often. And sort of three really Warhorse string orchestra pieces: St. Paul Suite, Holberg Suite. I don't know this piece that well, so I'm glad you brought this up. So I'll look into that. Yeah, and then. This one has Florence Price's First Symphony. I actually played this piece in the New York Youth Symphony. It's a fun piece. And then, of course, Rachel found John Boulogne or Le Chevalier de Saint George, who's considered the Black Mozart. And this piece really sounds like Mozart, but it's a great piece. And for the young person's concert, Penderecki's To the Victors of Hiroshima, which is often paired with Beethoven 9. I don't know why, but you find that in programs everywhere. Lark Ascending is a beautiful piece. Bartok Divertimento, of course. Yeah, so great. So I'm looking forward to Peter's and Rehan's programs. Okay.
Professor, I just had one question.
Yeah.
Could you explain the orchestra shorthand you've given us? I just want to make sure I got that right. When you say 2 2 2 4 3 2 1 10.
Yeah. So that's basically the wind instrumentation. So if it's 2 2 2 2, the first 4 numbers are flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon in pairs.
2 8. Yeah.
Right. And then the next set of 4 numbers is 4 3 3 1 usually. So 4 horns, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, 1 tuba.
Right.
Okay, so those 8 numbers, that's sort of the winds and brass.
Okay, gotcha. Then timpani and string. Yeah. So there's no drums or no.
Well, I mean, it depends on the piece.
Higher one.
You know, you can have a very traditional, Brahms symphony will usually have just timpani, or if at all anything else, maybe bass drum and cymbal. But more later pieces, like Stravinsky had 6 percussionists, so all playing like a whole battery of instruments. Okay,
so if you have a piano concerto, you have to hire a pianist.
Yes. So it's so most orchestras have a orchestral pianist. So if you play Shostakovich Symphony No. 1, there's a very prominent piano part in the orchestra.
Yeah.
It's not a piano concerto. And so Rachmaninoff piano concerto, Beethoven piano concerto, those piano parts tend to be very soloistic, very difficult. So they usually hire a soloist.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I kept you 7 minutes over. I'm sorry. On Wednesday, we'll have Lawrence Lowe. I will send you his bio, so please read up on it. Those of you working on the interviews, Amy's already completed it. If you need, and I believe, Peter, you're connected with Heather, and Rachel, you're connected with Mr. Glazer. And so EJ and Rehan, you have people?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. See you Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.